Welcome to the Draconeck and Friends official podcast, where we peel back the curtain on puzzle games and the people who make them. I'm Syrenne, the producer at Draconeck and Friends, and I'm joined, as always, by Alan Hazelden, the head Draconeck and Friends.
Hey there.
And today I'm joined also by Mairi, the studio manager at Draconeck and Friends.
Hello.
And also today we're joined by Joe Mansfield, who you may know from Joe Plays Puzzle Games and thinkygames.com.
Hello.
Before we get started, Joe, do you want to tell listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Joseph Mansfield, or Joe for short, and I run the Thinky Games website, thinkygames.com, with a wonderful team. We do everything we can to help people discover games they'll love to solve, which means we do things like news, reviews, a newsletter, videos, streams, all sorts of things, just to share great puzzly problem-solving games with people. As you mentioned separately, I also run a YouTube channel called Joe Plays Puzzle Games, where I post full playthroughs of puzzle games for people to watch if you like that kind of thing.
Including if you like watching 40 minutes on one puzzle in Luck Digital.
Yeah, exactly. My videos are for a very special kind of person that likes to watch every single moment of confusion, frustration, whatever,
It's
while
delightful.
playing a puzzle game.
It's truly delightful. I'm a happy viewer myself. Awesome. So today, the four of us are here to talk about our favorite Thinky puzzle games from 2024. We have each, prior to this, compiled a list of some of our favorite games, and we're each going to kind of take turns asking each other about them, starting discussion, and we'll see how this goes. There's some overlap on some games. There's some games that have no overlap, and I'm very excited to kick this off by asking Alan to talk to me about No Case Shall Remain Unsolved.
Yeah, so this is a detective game where I think kind of flew under the radar. I heard people talking about it as a under the radar game that was well worth playing, and it was one of the ones that I squeezed in the holiday period, so it's pretty fresh. You get these transcripts of people talking to each other, and it has some fun framing at the start of the game, setting up why it's the way it is. But it's basically you get these segments of conversation, but you don't know who said what, and you don't know the order they happened in. And you're trying to rearrange them to figure out the timeline where the conversations make sense. And you're also, while you're ordering them, you're getting senses of oh, well, this person must be talking about that. And yeah, I think structurally it's really interesting to me. It's Case of the Golden Idol is very it really hit, and it was this example of oh, you can take the same kind of ideas in something like Return of the Obra Dinn, but change the core UI of the game to convey the same kind of puzzle solving with a different user experience. It feels very differently. And I thought when I played Case of the Golden Idol, wow, this is really interesting for how much it evolves that genre. Sure, it has a different story, but the thing I was interested in as a game designer is how the user experience of that game changed the way that the game itself felt. And I think this game, No Case Shall Remain Unsolved, is another really interesting example of different UI giving you a different game. You can feel it's in the same space. I think the story it tells is it's a decent story. I think some people will fall in love with this game more than I did. I respect it more than it's something that I want to shout to the world, wow, this is my favorite game of the year. But yeah, I think it's really, really interesting, and a lot of people are really going to like it. So yeah, definitely worth checking out.
The editor on Thinky Games, Rachel Watts, is a big fan of this game as well, and we include it in our top games of the year as well. So you're restructuring these conversations, right? You're rearranging them. Are they? Always got the impression they were kind of is it people texting each other or sending messages to each other, or is it a transcript of a spoken conversation?
No, it's transcripts of spoken conversations.
I see. Okay.
It's a detective, and they are talking to various people in the world about a missing child case.
Got it.
And it's, I guess there's a few trigger warnings. It's not as dark as it might seem initially. There's some hard topics, but it's not a serial killer story.
Sure.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm very interested in this because this is a game that I bought based on some strong recommendations a few months ago, and then have not actually gotten around to playing.
Yeah, and I played it in like less than 3 hours. So
I was going to say it's pretty short, right?
like it was very bingeable. It was like, oh, I'm starting playing this. Oh, I'm still playing this. Oh, I'm done. Like, great.
This might be this evening game for me then. By the time this goes out to listeners, I'll probably have already finished this game.
You'll have to add an amendment to your voice recording. Cut in now to say what you think about the game.
I'll definitely splice it in, like right here. No, but no, that's very interesting and exciting. Also, bluntly, like a lot of the games we're going to be talking about today are like slightly longer games. That's actually very exciting to me that there's a really digestible, bite-sized game on this list.
Yeah, so up next, I'm going to pick another game that I saw on these lists that I don't know much about, but I saw it when it came out. I'm like, oh, that's got an interesting vibe. Mairi, can you tell me about, is this game trying to kill me?
That is a very good question. Actually, I think you might have originally told me about this game, Alan. I think we were like discussing it for Thinky Third Thursday, and I went away and played it. I don't know if I had too many high expectations, but I really, really enjoyed it. So the premise of Is This Game Trying to Kill Me? It's quite an interesting one. You are trapped inside a cabin in the woods, and there's kind of, I don't know, he's like a wizard or a vampire or something, and he's keeping you in this weird cabin, but you have in the center of your cabin an old PC terminal. Kind of what happens is you jump onto the PC terminal, you play a kind of like top-down dungeon crawler, but as you're playing this game, things around you change in the cabin. So you press a button on the PC in the game, and then something changes in the cabin. So you sort of get up from your desk, and then it turns into a first-person escape roomy game, and then you sort of move things around on the shelf in the escape room side of it, and again, something's changed on the PC. I've heard it's very inspired by Inscription, both in terms of the gameplay and the vibes, but I actually haven't played Inscription, so I can't compare the two. And maybe Inscription's better, but as my first sort of introduction to a game like this, I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's no surprise to anyone in this podcast that I'm a big fan of escape rooms, and it's very escape roomy. There are like a lot of ciphers. There's a lot of sort of picking things up, moving them around, finding the pattern, logic puzzles, keys, that kind of thing. But it's just different. It's a little bit of a twist on the genre in that, like, yeah, you've got this like computer to work with, and it opens up very quickly as well. And sort of with the top-down dungeon crawler, there's also boss battles, which aren't that puzzly, but they break up the flow of the game really nicely. And actually, interesting, it's a very short game, so I wanted to like throw that into the ring. I think I when I added this to my list, I hadn't finished it, and I made sure I finished it before we jumped into this because I knew I wanted to talk about it. I did finish it. I think it comes in about 3 hours, and I'm saying that with a big caveat in that like I spent a lot of time faffing around, but I'm pretty sure it's about sort of 2 to 3 hours, and there are multiple endings as well. So it's a nice quick one if anyone wants to get into it. Again, I don't know if it's my game of the year, but it's really interesting, and it's stuck in my mind a lot throughout this year.
I played about an hour of it, I think, on a Thinky Games stream, and was really enjoying it. I was very impressed by it. I think I've also not really played Inscription, but like I think the kind of game within a game thing is like the comparison that people are making, right? And the fact it's kind of like a game with escape room stuff around it. It's very cool. I liked it.
Yeah, that sounds...
Absolutely.
Hearing as someone who did play and loved Inscription, hearing the Inscription sort of call out is very, very interesting and fascinating to me. So I'm interested to see this. I'm just loving how many short games we've got. Let's just keep it on. Let's just not talk about any long games on this podcast.
One other thing I would mention about this game real quick, just for everyone's benefit, it is a horror game though. And when I first played it, it was quite dark and it did absolutely terrify me. I scare so easily, and there's a lot of like jump scares. Like you just imagine you're looking at a little computer screen within a game and something moves out of the corner of your eye and then you sort of step away from it and there's a jump scare. It's that level of horror vibes, which very fun.
That reminds me of a detail in it, which is that like, I think all the ways you can die in the 2D game within the game, they cause you to die in the cabin, right? And I think there's like a separate animation set up for every single way you can die in the game within a game and in the game outside of it. It's like very detailed. It's cool.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways to die if the title wasn't a giveaway. Is this game trying to kill me? The answer being yes.
So yeah, if you like step on like spikes, then I think spikes come out the floor in the cabin that you're in. Or if you like walk in front of an arrow that shoots out the side, an arrow will shoot out the side and hit you in the cabin that you're in. It's very
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
All right, moving on. I'm looking at the list. No surprise because I also love this game this year, but I would like to ask Syrenne about Duck Detective, please.
Yes. Okay. I love Duck Detective. Great choice in continuing to pick the short games. This game is about 2 hours long. This game is such a delight. So for people who didn't see, Duck Detective, the full name is this Duck Detective: The Secret Salami, is a Golden Idol like. It feels like 2024 was the first year where we got multiple real Golden Idol likes based on the sort of UX flow that Case of the Golden Idol managed to set up about basically having a journal or having a text entry field where you're trying to set up the mystery where it's like blank is being blank by blank in blank blank. Basically a very, very much more complicated version of like Clue or Cluedo. And so you are going around and you are getting information and you are figuring things out and you are piecing together what has happened. The key caveat or the key difference with Duck Detective is that it is cute as hell. Uh, Duck Detective is by the developer Happy Broccoli Games, which also made Kraken Academy a few years ago. So this is very colorful, a lot of unique and funny characters. The lead detective's name is Eugene McQuacklin. This game is just generally very funny. It's not a really dark game. It is transposing a lot of the best parts of Golden Idol onto something, first of all, much more family friendly, much more all ages friendly, but then doing so in a very digestible manner of being a cheaper game that is shorter, a game that, let's say, doesn't rely on Orientalist depictions of indigenous peoples in the same way that the Golden Idol games do, especially the first one. Just being able, like every in case it's not obvious from Duck Detective, all of the characters are anthropomorphized animals, usually in like full human clothes attire, like a jumpsuit or overalls or a trench coat and a hat, like which is what Eugene McQuacklin wears. The writing is very, very funny. The vibes are immaculate. I thought that the sort of central mysteries and like how you are piecing together everything together and how it all comes together in the end without spoiling things, I thought it was actually pretty satisfying. So I came away from Duck Detective very impressed. I had been half paying attention to it like significantly before launch. I started paying attention to it a lot more because it was launching into Cerebral Puzzle Showcase 2024. So in that sense, it was much more on my radar. And then once we got code for it, I kind of just played through the entire thing in like one sitting. I really, really enjoyed Duck Detective. Mari, I know this is also on your list.
They've got a sequel coming out, right?
Yes, Duck Detective 2
They've
is
just
coming out
announced it.
very soon.
Mm-hmm. What's the subtitle for that? Do you remember?
Yes, The Ghost of Glamping.
Cool.
Yes, that was announced, I believe, at the end of year Nintendo Indie World.
Really excited about that.
Which honestly, shout outs to this game for like getting first party console attention. Sorry, Mara, this is also on your list?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I think you covered everything I absolutely love about this game. But this game has such a funny little story to me in that, as you mentioned, it launched into the Cerebral Puzzle Showcase. And one of our very first streamers at the Cerebral Puzzle Showcase was streaming it. And I was kind of doing that thing where I was like, I have to monitor this stream, but I can't watch. And I was sitting there with my fingers on my ears like, la, 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 I don't want it to be spoiled kind of thing. And then 2 days later, I immediately played it myself. Loved it. I knew a bit of the story already from watching someone else stream it, but it's just so fun. Like, it's unbelievably lighthearted, sweet. It's like full of puns as well. And
Oh,
yeah,
it's
like you
very
said, it's
punny.
very punny. I didn't know there were so many like duck related puns out there. But yeah, no, it's such a delight. I would play it again. By now, I think I've forgotten all the answers. I think I could play it again now.
Isn't there like a screen in it which is just called like deductions?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's the level of silly base level puns we're working on.
Perfect.
Yeah, and it's funny that like if Case of the Golden Idol hadn't had their, I forget what they call it. Is it the it's not the deduction screen. It's a thinking screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
If that hadn't had the thinking screen, would they have had the deduction screen? I
don't know.
Who knows?
I'm just very, very, very pleased with this game. I'm also pleased with this game is not in a vacuum of being inspired by Case of the Golden Idol. Also, this game is not embarrassed about being inspired by Case of the Golden Idol. I'm just very excited because I think that those mechanics are so ripe and like they figured out so many clever UI UX hurdles.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
With this kind of game. And so to see other creators being able to take that as a starting point and work off of that and build like their own games around that, their own stories, their own structures, I'm actually just very excited. This is that is one thing that when I first played Case of the Golden Idol, I was like, please, please, please let this be an inspiration to a generation of designers. There's like every now and then you can see a game where you're like, this should be an inspiration. And then it sometimes feels like it is or it isn't. And usually if it isn't, it's just because it's actually really hard to build off of. But in this case, I'm just very glad to see games being able to go from there. Joe.
Hello.
I have been waiting for about 2 years to hear you talk to me about Isles of Sea and Sky.
Probably was that long ago, right? When we last talked about it, yeah.
2 years. So please, Joe, talk to me about Isles of Sea and Sky.
Sure. So Isles of Sea and Sky by Cicada Games is a kind of puzzle, Sokoban, adventure, Metroidvania thing. It has an art style that's very reminiscent of like classic Zelda. And so I've been very interested in it for a long time because I saw the art style and I was just like, this looks so much like Link's Awakening is my favorite Zelda game ever, the original. And absolutely loved it, and this made me think of that, and so I absolutely wanted to play this. And it was also, Isles of Sea and Sky was also our most anticipated game winner in the Thinky Awards last year, so I wasn't the only one excited to play it. So yeah, you're a character who washes up on a beach of a kind of tropical island, and you just sort of go exploring the island and solving puzzles that you encounter along the way. And I kind of described it as Sokoban because a lot of the puzzles are, around like block pushing type things. They're not all like that, but it is a very prominent part of the puzzle solving. It's also very dense with puzzles. So these islands, like you're going from screen to screen, and like every screen has maybe like 5 puzzles on it, like interwoven with each other.
I was going to say at least like 3. It feels like it's the minimum.
Yeah, probably. And so like there might be one that you have to come to from a different direction, or they might just literally be overlapping each other. Like you solve one puzzle and then you might want to come back to the room later with because one part of this is that it is a kind of traditional Metroidvania in that you get ability upgrades later on, and there's these kind of like elemental spirit creature things that you can interact with that have their own abilities, and you unlock those as you go. And so you might go through a room one time and there's no like elemental creatures in there, and then you come back later after you've unlocked them and there's suddenly these things in that room and you have to interact with them to solve different puzzles. And so you're sort of going around solving these puzzles, collecting keys, collecting gems, and there's like these various islands that you go to. You jump on the back of a turtle to like sail between these islands, which is really fun. And yeah, you're just going between these islands trying to collect as much as you can, collect as many gems as you can. One of the interesting aspects of it that is probably also the reason it gets like the most criticism is that because of the fact you're unlocking abilities throughout the game, you'll sometimes go through a room in the game and not know whether you can actually solve the puzzle or not, because you're kind of looking at it going, maybe this is possible, maybe it's not possible. And, it's kind of a basic premise of a puzzle is that it should kind of seem impossible at first. And so determining whether a puzzle is like impossible just because it's difficult or impossible because you don't have the abilities is kind of part of the puzzle you've got to solve. I actually didn't have any problems with that, although I've seen people say that that kind of bothered them when they were playing the game. So if you don't like that kind of stuff, then you might not enjoy it. But if you like let yourself just kind of freely roam elsewhere and go solve some other puzzles, and because if you look at a puzzle and you go, I'm not sure if this is possible, but I think it might not be, you might come across an ability later that lets you solve it, and then you'll be like, oh, I'm glad I went away from it instead of just bashing my head against the same puzzle, for hours.
Did they address that in a patch? I have a feeling I saw them talking about like adding some kind of UI thing, and it felt like it might be a kind of subtle UI thing that you might not necessarily pick up on.
Sure. So I was looking at that today because I played the original version, and I was looking at what they had updated since then. And there was a patch in September. I'm not sure if it fixes that problem specifically. They do fix all sorts of things though, and there were a bunch of other issues with the game at the beginning. Like there were some puzzles that were kind of left in as teasers, but you couldn't actually solve them, and it was like hard to know that you couldn't solve them. And like things like that have been cleared up. And like if you look at the patch notes for the September update, a load of great things have been fixed there. I don't know if like fully made it so that you always know whether you've got the right things. Like maybe that is something, and I just haven't noticed it. But it kind of feels like that is a sort of essential part of the gameplay because of its structure. But yeah, I've also heard that they're trying to do things that will improve that experience. And maybe there's more updates coming. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I was looking at the September notes, and it looks like they've done a bunch of great stuff in that update.
Awesome. Yes. No, full disclosure for everyone, the reason that I've been waiting for years is because I was working on this game in 2023 alongside the director Jason, and Joe, who was my coworker at the time, kept anytime that topic of this would come on, he would basically just rip his headphones off.
I would just leave the call. Yeah,
he would just be like, I do not want to hear about this game. I want to go in pure, fresh eyes. I want the perfect pure experience. Do not tell me anything about this game in advance. So
it's the kind of game that you like. It's kind of about exploration and discovering things and learning how the rules work just by like these like elemental creatures you encounter.
If you know that there's a turtle, then your experience would be ruined.
Oh no! So spoiled it for everyone.
Yes. So this is just particularly delightful for me to get the opportunity to finally, after all this time, hear that, yes, Joe did in fact like Isles of Sea and Sky after all this time.
Indeed. It's a very cool game. And just worth saying, like, there's a bunch of very strong puzzles in there.
Oh, yeah.
There's also, I think they've done a bunch of puzzle updates because there was like an ability in the game that kind of broke a lot of the puzzles, which in some ways is like fun. It's like, oh, you get this amazing ability and suddenly you don't have to do all these puzzles. But I don't think it was intended, and so I think they've updated some of the puzzles to make sure that they still work after you've got that ability. But yeah, really well designed.
Yes. I mean, you can hear Jason's episode already on the podcast feed talking about a lot of the design iteration and like playtest feedback, but just to reiterate one of his points there, which is that when you have a game this big and also this difficult, it's really hard to get comprehensive playtest feedback.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Especially when all the good playtesters refuse to play your game.
Yeah, especially when Joe is like, no, not until it's done. Thank you.
I do have that problem in general. It's like I wanna play games when they're out and like put it on the YouTube channel and stuff. And it's like, but I actually also would be helpful as a playtester. So
yes,
I don't know
you
how
sure
to balance
would,
those
because
things.
you would have been able to get to the end. Which a genuinely shocking amount of playtesters had not enough time to do.
Indeed.
How many hours was the game completely to complete?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure.
Let me go to our favorite, howlongtobeat.com. They say 13 to mainline it, 26 to completionist it.
Oh, okay.
That feels right.
All right, shall I throw over to the next person?
Yes, please.
All right, let's go back to Mairi, if that's all right. Let's talk about Well, so you've got a demo on there. Should we go to the blueprints demo? Should we do that? Sure.
Oh gosh, I have so much to say about the Blueprints demo.
What you mean, Mairi's Game of the Year 2025?
Honestly, this demo alone is my game of the year of 2024. And even if the full game is just the demo again with like 2 hours extra, it's going to be my game of the year for 2025. I just love it. But yeah, I mean, hard to talk about the game in full because it is just a short demo. But the premise of the game, that I understand it, you're physically building out this sort of 3D first-person escape room-ish space by laying out blueprint tiles on a map. So you start in this room, you can go up to a door, and when you open a door, it kind of pops you out of the UI and it's like, draw a tile from 3 options. So it might be like, oh, I want to go through a corridor, I want to go into the kitchen, or I want to go into a bedroom. And every different type of room does a different thing and has different benefits inside it. And when you draw that card, that room is there. The whole premise of, I guess, the whole game, but especially the demo, is you want to get to the end of the house, so to the elusive room 46, if I remember correctly. But it's quite hard because as you kind of get further and further into this house, it sort of really ramps up in complexity quite quickly. There are things like security doors, there are like special locked areas, there's like various items you need to collect along the way, and items may or may not appear in certain rooms. And most importantly, every time you move, it costs you energy as well. So you could get pretty exhausted early on and fail too early. Maybe doesn't sound that puzzly, but it very, very puzzly, very replayable for a very short demo. So the demo only goes over sort of 3 days in game time, and you get to the end. And whether or not you even find room 46, or no matter how far you get into the demo, it kind of gets to the end of day 3, and it's like, oh, thanks for playing the demo. At which point I immediately start again. I'm like, erase all my progress, let's go again. And yeah, I think it was you, Alan, that mentioned this game to me first. We were looking at it for Thinky Third Thursday. I think I played like the 30-minute demo and I really enjoyed it. And then I played it again. And then I finished up work with Dreknik and friends for the day. And then I played it again. And then I blinked and it was midnight. And then I went on Reddit and I was like, I need to look up the secrets. I just kept playing this game for days. I just loved it. And yeah, even now I still jump back in to like play it again. And I keep making a joke that like, I can't open Blue Sky because every time I type like BL, it pops up like Blueprints release date ? Like that's probably top Googled like search as well. But yeah, I think probably my explanation here doesn't make it sound like I don't know. It's so much puzzlier than I can possibly explain. But above everything, it's just so charming. Like again, even if they just released the demo, it's still my game of the year for 2025. I absolutely love it. Yeah, did anyone else play it out of interest?
I did not, but clearly they should have just released this as the full game. It would have done well by itself.
I know.
I wonder how much the full game's going to add. I mean, probably a lot.
Yeah, I really don't know. I guess I could just keep repeating the days for a longer time, and kind of the lore could go quite deep. If I remember correctly, did Rachel play it at Thinky Games as well? I seem to remember she really enjoyed it.
I think so, yeah. We've definitely had some coverage of it on the site, so there's a few articles about it. And yeah, I think I've seen a lot of people excited for it, but I did not play the demo, so I don't know what it's like. It's very reminiscent, though, of the board game Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yeah, I mean, so I did play the demo, not nearly as much as Mairi. And when I saw the trailer, I got very strong Betrayal at House on the Hill vibes. Playing the game, that's not actually a big like part of it.
Interesting.
There's you're moving through this mansion and you're placing rooms as you explore. That is like kind of like stuff from Betrayal, but like everything else is like very different.
Sure.
So like yeah, when I saw the trailer, like that was the first place my head went to. But it's very interesting how much that doesn't really feel like a reference point when you're actually playing. Yeah. I played it. I maybe did like 1 3-day session of the demo and then stopped there. Yeah, I found a lot of interesting stuff. I could see the ways it could get much deeper. It didn't quite get its hooks into me. I guess, yeah, there wasn't like, maybe I just didn't find anything that would have like pushed me to go like, oh, whoa, this means that and that means that. It was like more just like lots of small pieces like, oh, that could be used in that way. So yeah, I don't really have a sense of the scope of the thing. Like obviously there's 45 rooms plus one, but like I don't have a sense of like, oh, I'm going to play this for like 3 hours and then I'm going to come to a satisfying conclusion, or like, oh, is this going to be like 50 hours to like go into the depths and like figure everything out? And like, I don't know if I need that, and certainly I don't need that from a demo, but like, yeah, I came away from the demo like not really sure what to expect from the full game in some way, which is interesting.
It's interesting because I guess since it's like randomly generated, some people might play the demo and not see the thing that is the hook. So maybe Mairi did see something else that got her hooked.
I think that's very true. I think I wasn't really understanding the full game until probably my second or third playthrough, but I you probably didn't even get to this, Alan. But like things like at some point in the game, I realized there was sort of a world outside the house as well, and so I spent one of my playthroughs running around gardens. And at some point, someone on Reddit said something like, "Oh, if you get to this room in this order with this item, you can get to this thing." And it was like only in the demo, but I was like, "Oh, like there's actually like secrets in this demo that do sort of suggest a much bigger complexity and things like that." So sort of
it feels like a really
areas.
good. It feels like a really good game to play like in a small group of people, like crowdsourcing your discoveries.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably what hooked me. I sort of started Googling it and found people on Reddit and things like that kind of blew the game open a little bit more. And for a demo, yeah, I've played at least 10 hours, at least. And it's just the demo. So I love it. Okay, moving on. Speaking of spooky mansions in the countryside, I'm looking at our list, and a lot of us recommended Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I might jump to Syrenne, because I can see that near the top of your list. Syrenne, tell me about Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Yes, so... Man, I was so pumped for Lorelei the moment they announced this. So, this is published by the former incarnation of Annapurna Interactive, and is developed by Simogo. And Simogo is a fascinating dev team that, like, you know, good future podcast episode. I would love to pick their brains about how they decide what game to make next, because they are not strictly a thinky game developer. They've made Device 6, which is like interactive fiction. I mean, Device 6 is not their first game, but like they went from Device 6 to Sayonara Wild Hearts, which is basically a Lana Del Rey pop album game. Like, that's the best way to describe it. And then they made Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which is a deeply meant for puzzle sickos game. And I'm like, you only make bangers, but how are you deciding what to go do? I don't even know what to say about Lorelei that isn't spoiling something. This is possibly the hardest game to talk about. I will say that my friend, who was a game reviewer, received a copy of this game, and in the mail, Annapurna sent them a notebook for taking notes and a pen, and a note that says, "We do not expect you to roll credits." And then it basically just goes on to say, so we expect actually very few of players to roll credits on this game, because this game is very, very hard.
That feels like maybe an exaggeration. I'd actually like to know how many. Like, is it? I wonder if it's like comparable to other like puzzle games. Yeah.
So, I mean, if we want to like peel back all the layers on that, my instinct is that puzzle players have a relatively consistent clear rate, and they're hoping that this hits way outside of the puzzle player audience in terms of like sales, and that audience will not be
true.
Hit.
Yeah, that's very fair.
If I go to Steam achievements, you know, that is a relatively low percentage, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember exactly which achievement is, because all of the achievements are phrased as like the Black Arts Coffee Club Member of the Month, awarded for plentiful use of our services. But it looks for sure like it is below 10%.
Okay, cool.
So yes, if anyone else wants to jump in and try and help explain what the
I don't mind trying to give like a little bit of a what the
explain
setup is.
what the fuck this is.
So
sorry,
my
I'm the one that swore.
My first impression of the game was like, oh, it looks like classic Resident Evil in some way. It's like third person, fixed cameras, and you're walking around a kind of spooky mansion, like unlocking doors and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of is like that in the sense that it's got those factors, but there's like no zombies or anything. I mean,
well.
This is such a hard game to talk about.
It is. But the basic premise is that you are a woman that's just arrived in her car at a kind of manor, and you've got a letter that's invited you there. And so your kind of first objective is just to try to go into that manor and start exploring it. And it's a super weird vibe. It's very dreamlike. It reminds me a lot of Twin Peaks. There are some scenes that I'm like, yes, this feels like it's just a homage to Twin Peaks. And it's like you very quickly start to feel like, I don't even know when we are or where we are, like any of that. That's how it's kind of dreamlike. But the thing that I was like most impressed by with this game, and I will say that I find it hard to pick favorites of the year, but this is definitely the game that's left the biggest impression on me this year. The narrative like really comes together. It is very weird and incomprehensible to begin with, but it really comes together and makes a lot of sense.
And the narrative gets pieced together also.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a puzzle in and of itself. Like throughout the game, you're like figuring out like, who is this character? Is this even a real person? Like, is this person the same as this other person? What year is this? And all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just really fun for that to come together. And like in a lot of games, if there was a lot of text, I would be like, oh, it's just getting in the way of the puzzles. But in this game, like there are rooms where there's like loads of text, and I was just really excited to read it because it's like you're figuring out like what on earth is going on here. And yeah, I guess the other thing to mention is that the puzzles in this are, I think it's one of the very few games that really focuses on what I would call like cryptic puzzles. It's like they're almost like the kind of like if you got like a puzzle book for Christmas, it'd be full of
very
like
escape room puzzles.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
To me, this game is like everything, right? It is escape room. It is fascinating story. It is immaculate vibes. Mm-hmm. It is sicko level puzzles. It is puzzle after puzzle after puzzle enshrined in mystery after mystery. And then without saying anything, holy cow, the ending.
And actually, I say escape room puzzles. What I actually mean is puzzle hunt puzzles.
Yeah.
Which is not a reference point that's applicable to most people, but like it's very much like, this is for sickos.
And I guess the one thing it doesn't do, it does it a little bit. It does, okay, definitely does it a little bit, but most of the puzzles are very like self-contained. They're like, oh, there's this door I've got to open, and
most of them.
There's like a puzzle like right next to it, and some of the discussion I've seen around the game, because at first, in our like Thinky Games article about best games of the year, Rachel wrote that like about how like well integrated the games are with the narrative, and at first I had a bit of a reaction to that. Was like, but are they really? But I've been thinking about that more, and I think the reason I kind of didn't agree with that is that they're very like self-contained. They could almost, in fact, there's like randomization in the game, so like some of the puzzles can be in different places for different players. So if you're like looking up how do I get through this particular door, the same puzzle might not be there for you or somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I guess because of this randomization, these puzzles can be kind of lifted and put pretty much anywhere else in the game. But I do agree that thematically, they're really connected to the narrative. Like every puzzle you do is tied into the theme of the game and what's actually going on there. And it does all kind of make sense by the end. Yeah, it's just cool to see a game that features those kinds of puzzles. Usually you only see them in, for example, like a puzzle hunt or a kind of cryptic puzzle book, that kind of stuff. And there's literally like a puzzle book within the game that you solve puzzles in. So yeah, it's very cool to see that.
One of the things I really liked about this game, which really you reminded me so much by saying all the puzzle hunt stuff, is that there are a lot of things, and I'm trying to say this without spoilers, but there's a lot of things that reference real world stuff. Like in a lot of escape rooms or puzzle hunts, you don't really want to have something that requires too much outside knowledge. You sort of want everything to be there. But I remember there's like, you get loads of like books and you can scroll through, and everything you could possibly need to know in the game you have in one of like hundreds of books. So like if you're not familiar with like Roman numerals or something, there is a book on Roman numerals. And I remember really appreciating that. It was a massive amount of reading, and just like you, I did read everything. But I appreciated that they really did give you the tools. And sometimes I remember sort of working the other way, like being stuck on a puzzle, but having something and knowing I have to use the thing, but not making the link yet.
Yeah.
Really clever the way they do that. I just liked it a lot.
Yeah, the game has the, like, it calls it like photographic memory. Basically, anything you read in the game is that you can just like look it up at any time. It is worth mentioning the kind of weird input system in this game. They've gone with a control scheme where there's literally, like, other than moving with the joystick or D-pad, there's literally only one button. Like every button does the same thing. It does sometimes make the menus a little bit tedious, but you know, I guess they were just being experimental. But yeah, so you've got this menu full of stuff you can look through. So you never... one thing going into the game is I was expecting to have to write a lot of notes, but because of the photographic memory in the game, I actually didn't end up writing too many. I probably did still fill my whiteboard though, with like mad ravings.
I wrote pages and pages. I use scissors as well. I remember using scissors when I was solving this game.
I just assumed that the control scheme was... it's not available on mobile right now that I'm aware of, but I just assumed that this game, that was around coming to mobile at some point.
Interesting.
Because those are decisions that I might have made if I were trying to figure out how to adapt this game to mobile.
Yeah, fair. Maybe.
Awesome. Yes. No, I'm excited that all of us were so head over heels over this game. Alan, because you didn't chime in on that, I'm going to throw to you for Star Stuff.
Yeah. Great choice. What a lovely game. So you are controlling this character wandering around a space station, solving puzzles to collect star pieces to repower a generator or something. And the puzzles themselves are programming puzzles. So you are a little person walking around a space, but you're also programming the behavior of these robots. And so you have to program the right behavior such that robots are going to do the thing, that you then interact with the robot and pick up something from over here and give it to this robot over there just before they pick it up and take it somewhere else. And so, you're like, a lot of programming games are very abstract and solitary and like, oh, I'm like looking at this from a god's perspective and like, I'm just telling the robots what to do. I'm setting it up. I'm hitting play. And it's both more like characterful and playful than a lot of programming games, but it's also just a bit more interactive because you've got this character that's moving around at the same time. I think it's a really solid game. Like, it's very approachable, but there's really, really good puzzles. And I just had a lovely time. I did playtest the game several times through development, which meant that by the final, like, it's actually surprising that I did sit down with the final game and went, like, no, I'm gonna play all this again. And I hadn't played a few versions before it came out, but I still had a really good time that last time with the final build.
This game is so delightful. I didn't put it on my list because I also worked on this game, but man, this game is so delightful.
Yeah, I love this game as well. I just want to make a point about this as well, that it is a programming game, but it's not a programming game like a Zachtronics programming game. It's not like open-ended problems where you're like, you sort of just write whatever code happens to make it work, and there's like lots of ways to do that. It's much more like a more traditional puzzle game where you're like trying to get your character to the end of the puzzle, and that involves like moving boxes around and putting them on buttons that make bridges appear and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you're having to like program these bots that will help you do that. And so I think there are a few puzzles where there's like multiple ways of solving it, but usually it's like about just like, you've got a few steps that you need to program for the robots, and like, how do you get them to do the right things in the right order to help you get to the right place, which I thought was really cool. I like haven't seen, at least I don't think I've played another game that uses programming in that way, and I'd like to see more of that for sure.
Yeah, just a delightful twist on mechanics, a delightful set of puzzles, a delightful aesthetic. I love this game. Absolutely love this game.
I have one other thing to mention as well about it. I'm just looking at my notes.
Yes.
So we were at EGX last year in London, running a kind of like part of the family gaming area in that space. So there were lots of families coming in with kids, playing a bunch of thinky games. And there was a mum and a son that came in and played Star Stuff, and it was really fun seeing them playing it, and they were like having such a great time. But the mum then sent us an email afterwards, and I wanted to read what that email says, which is, just wanted to say thank you for showing my 8-year-old son how to play Star Stuff today, and for telling me about your amazing organization. Michael was so happy to play this game, and I didn't realize he was the perfect age to start coding. And like, that was just amazing to like realize that, like, just showing them this game encouraged them to think about like, oh, maybe we can like learn to program, maybe we can learn to code, which I think is what they were hoping to do with Star Stuff as well.
Yeah, I think. I don't know if you shared that email with the dev team.
I did share it with them, yeah.
That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, what a delight.
I think we should do one more each, and then a quick fire round of anything that we haven't brought up. Joe, let's talk about Leap Year.
Oh, yes. Okay. Leap Year. Cool. So Leap Year is a kind of platformer with a very, very ingenious premise. So it is a platformer where if you jump just normally, you will probably die. So you have kind of fall damage, and if you fall, you'll die. But the distance that you fall, like the distance you need to fall to die is like less than your normal jump height. So the funny thing with this game is as soon as you start playing it, you will like just naturally, as you do in any platform, you just start jumping around and you will just die over and over again because you're just constantly jumping. And you can't jump in this game unless you plan out where you're jumping to and how you're going to make it from one platform to another. So yeah, so that's kind of the basic premise. There's not like much of a story, just kind of exploring this kind of weird cartoony world, figuring out how to make it through each room. How do you like jump without falling more than your normal jump height? And then there are just a bunch of like really cool discoveries as you go. It's kind of about that you'll come across a room and there'll be some like seemingly impossible obstacle to get across, and then you'll learn something new about how you can use your jumping abilities to get somewhere where you didn't realize you could get to before. And yeah, it's also pretty short. I think it's probably about a couple of hours long. And yeah, just a great time. I don't think I have too much else to say about that. Do you, Alan? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I just loved the way that it kept surprising me with mechanical twists of like, oh, like this is kind of tricking you into discovering new mechanics in a really delightful way. I almost stopped just before the end. I was like, oh, I've got like 26 out of 28 things. Like I'm not sure if I'm going to spend the time to find these last two pieces. I don't know if I'm going to get much out of it, but I'm really glad I pushed through because that final section after you've got the 28th is just a lovely like guided tour of some cool things that is worth seeing. It like recontextualizes a lot of stuff in a really fun way.
Agreed. And one of the fun things to mention, so yeah, you're exploring this world trying to collect like the days of the month, I guess, like on a calendar. And they do the classic thing of like the very first room that you start in has one of the last numbers in it. And so as soon as you start the game, you're like, wait, what? How am I supposed to ever get that? And yeah, it's fun to realize how that eventually comes together by the end of the game. So let's go to Syrenne with, I'm going to choose Tactical Breach Wizards.
Yeah, Tactical Breach Wizards is the latest game by Tom Francis and his team at, Suspicious Developments? Yeah, Suspicious Developments. Truly, like, okay, like, if you don't know what this game is, listener, I want you to close your eyes. Imagine just about the best tactics game, like tile-based tactics game you can come up with, where it's all perfect information, and you are very, very specifically making movement and attack decisions, and also there's a constant mechanic for defenestration, which is a fancy word for kicking a dude out a window, and it's the most satisfying thing every single time you do it, and you get to do it like 10 times a puzzle. that is this game. Like, this game is everything I wanted it to be. I played a demo of it a while ago. When the full game came out, I just sat down and I played and I played and I said, oh no, this is dangerous. I'm getting into this too much. Over the winter break, I played more and more and I finished it. This game rules. This game is so satisfying. The way that different mechanics will sort of layer on top of each other, because this is not just a tactical game about kicking people out of windows. You are also as much as in my heart, that's all it is. You're running in, there's gangsters or terrorists or whoever on the other side, and you are wizards. And so you have a lot of very interesting mechanics at your disposal, such as the ability to chain together using like electricity all of the different enemies that like all theoretically have line of sight against each other, and being able to use these mechanics in a way that like the way that the mechanics are fresh is something that I haven't experienced in tactics games in a while. And because I haven't actually talked about it on here, I play a lot of tactics games. I'm big into Fire Emblem. I'm like big into grid-based strategy, Fog of War, trying to figure everything out. This game does not do Fog of War. This game does Perfect Information, which is much more puzzly, much more thinky, which I appreciate for the context of this because it means I get to sing its praises here.
Doesn't it also have like basically unlimited rewind? Is that
absolutely
right?
Does.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it has the best version of like a skill tree where you start ultra powerful and everything just basically makes you even more of a like god, and just everything is broken so everything is balanced. And I joke about everything is broken so everything is balanced, but like it actually, like where you come to it from a game design perspective, it is so intricately thought through.
Yeah, it's very impressive that you can have a game like this with a tech tree like this that gives you like the starting powers are very, very powerful, but then the powers you get on top of that are extremely powerful. And like, I haven't played the game through to completion, but what I've played, like, yeah, it doesn't feel broken at any point, or it feels broken in the right way where you're just stomping on enemies and it feels great at every point.
Exactly. Like sometimes you're stomping on enemies.
But it's not so broken that it's too easy.
No, absolutely. You're still even in the easier puzzles, you're still thinking. And because the game is so intricately designed around the ultra satisfying high power moves that you have, it is such satisfying game design. I would strongly recommend, like, for like some of the other games I've played, like Dark Detective, if you're really into mysteries, I would recommend. Like Lorelei, if you're a real puzzle sicko, I would recommend. I would recommend Tactical Breach Wizards to pretty much everyone that is comfortable with characters holding guns. Like, if that is not a deal breaker for you in a video game, this game is a must play immediately. Like, this game, for people who are tactics fans, for people who are not tactics fans, I honestly think that this is, like, take a step back. I played over 100 games last year that were each more than at least an hour or two put into it. I play a lot of video games. Tactical Breach Wizards is one of like my top 10 favorite games of last year, not thinky. Like, Tactical Breach Wizards absolutely rules. It is so fantastic. The last time I played a game that was tacticsy that left me feeling this excited was Marvel's Midnight Suns, which Firaxis made a couple years ago. This is just giving me a lot of the same excitement and challenge. And yeah, I could just rave about how happy this game makes me, but
it's also just very funny.
It's in case kick dude out a window as a core mechanic didn't let you know, this game does not especially take itself very seriously. This game is very funny. If you're wondering, what else did this team make? This is the developer of Gunpoint and Heat Signature and Floating Point. So if you've played any of those and you're like, oh, I think I get it. Yeah, Yeah, this is not me saying Tom Francis retire, but this feels almost like a magnum opus of design. So, highly, 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 highly recommend.
High praise. Wow.
Yes, I think that anyone on this call that has not played a significant amount of Tactical Breach Wizards, I implore you to dig in. This game is so good. It feels unfair as people who work in this space. All right, Mairi, I'm gonna throw to you on Botany Manor.
Botany Manor. Great choice. Loved this game. It's not super fresh in my mind because I did play it when it first came out back in, near the start of the year. I think April or May. But essentially, Botany Manor is like a sweet first-person escape room. You play this like retired, I think she's like an elderly botanist exploring her own manor house. It's kind of slow-paced, whimsical. It's very escape roomy. The puzzles, I remember them being deeply satisfying. It really like prioritizes sort of taking your time exploring and kind of like really understanding like the plants and the sort of world you're in. Again, I don't really want to give any spoilers because I do think the story in this is absolutely beautiful as well, but it just prioritizes really engaging with these sort of seeds and these plants, and you're growing plants and then sort of using the plants to progress to the next area of the house. I do remember the puzzles aren't especially challenging, but the thing I enjoyed most was kind of that core mechanic of sort of learning about a new plant, figuring out how to grow it from a seed, what it needs. They're all very fictional plants, like plants that can set fire to things, plants that can do all kinds of weird and wonderful things, like a one that produces light, I think, and like clears the fog. And so, yeah, in that way, it is an escape room game, but it has its own little twist. I always think when I play sort of first-person escape room games on my computer, I'm like, how would I make this in real life? You couldn't make this in real life, and that's really a nice thing. It's a real vibe. I know we mentioned before this podcast episode, talk about the vibes, but this for me is such a vibey game. Even though I played it so many months ago, thinking about my games of the year, it just stuck out real like bright star in every game I played this year. I absolutely loved it. Another thing about this game as well, I don't know how many other people have played this in this call, but this is the game I recommend to non-puzzle people as well. I always kind of have a bit of a hard time recommending sort of the hardcore puzzle games. I would never recommend Lorelei to some of my
Never.
non-puzzle friends. Never. It would put them off video games for life unless they were like really in a mood to solve puzzles. This one, I recommend to everyone, just like you did with Tactical Breach Wizards. This is the game that I'm like, yeah, you want to try a puzzle game? Try this one. Yeah, don't know what else to say other than really, really loved Botany Manor.
It is very approachable, isn't it? I was going to mention that it's funny describing it as it totally is like an escape room game, but you start outside and you're breaking like into your own house. Yeah.
Escape in game.
Yeah. I mean, a few years ago, I produced Escape Academy, and one of the big like design ethos things of that was to sand off a lot of the edges that something like Escape Simulator has for people who are not super into the space. Like Escape Simulator is very, for people who don't know, that is a simulator in so much as you can pick up everything, and it has a lot of user generated content, but it is also like daunting and overwhelming if you're just getting started in this kind of space. And Escape Academy was very much designed to be around like, okay, well, we're going to like limit points of interaction. We're going to design the puzzles around that. We're going to design this. Botany Manor honestly feels very in conversation with that ethos in a way that made me really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so approachable. I think you do sort of pick things up and put them down, but someone correct me if I'm wrong. You don't have a big inventory system. I believe you just sort of have one thing in your hand at once and then sort of use it, put it down, which is unique.
I think you can only interact with stuff that like is actually relevant to a puzzle. I think the problem in Escape Sim.
Yeah, you can only pick up something and take it around if part of the puzzle is taking that thing somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Although it doesn't seem to have a system for if you take something up and leave it in a stupid place and forget where you left it.
That's user error, Alan.
That absolutely is.
I would simply play better.
I'm I'm going to throw it back to Alan, just looking at the list. Wait, Alan, you haven't been in this round, right?
Nope.
Well, it's got to be Rise of the Golden Idol then. Alan, please tell me about Rise of the Golden Idol.
I mean, so this is the one game that was on everyone's lists.
Yep.
Rise of the Golden Idol. It's more Golden Idol. Case closed. Moving on.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's quick.
I mean, that's kind of all I feel like it's. I don't know. No, I do have more to say about it. Like, I think it innovates on the first game in interesting ways structurally. Like, when I first played the demo for this game and saw that what they were doing with the chapter summary puzzles, I was like really intrigued. I'm like, oh wow, this is really smart. That's like a really sensible innovation that lets you do so much more, and like it lets you tell a story that doesn't have to be a lot more complicated, but it means you can make sure that people are following along in a way that they kind of just have one moment of like complicated twists in the first game, whereas you can do that like once a chapter in this game if you want to. And so yeah, like I saw that, I was like, oh, that's a really clever design exploration of how you can take that base system and take it further.
One thing that's kind of interesting about this game is that with the first game, the two brothers like designed the whole thing themselves and did all the art and stuff. And in this one, they like hired a team of, I think it was like 5 designers and like gave the cases out. And I guess there's a lot more cases in this game as well. But I think you can kind of get the feel that there's like more people involved in this. There's a lot more variety to the structure of the cases and the kind of locations. It feels very varied, which makes it fun. There was one innovation that they've done is or one thing they've changed about the original game is that they've like some of the UI stuff has changed. Like you can open multiple things up at the same time. I actually kind of felt like that didn't really help me very much. I was kind of just opening everything and then closing everything, which made it not very different to just using the thinking panel from the first game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the simplicity of this is either open or closed was actually better. And I was constantly, even through the final case, I was constantly like clicking behind something and going, oh no, I can't close that without closing the whole of the thinking stuff. And like, it just, I think it's not an unsolvable problem. I think that this version of the UI could be better, but I don't think this version of the UI that they shipped with is better.
Yeah, and I think it's cool that they're experimenting and trying to figure out a way to make it a better UI.
And a more platform scalable UI.
Yeah, actually, interestingly, I hear that some of the puzzles are different on mobile.
I would not be surprised.
Oh.
So I had a friend who's playing the game currently on the Switch, and she was asking me like, "Oh, how do I solve this puzzle?" And I was like, "Oh," and I was trying to give a hint, like, "Look at this particular thing." And there's a detail in the version I played on PC that just isn't in the Switch version, and I assume that's just because it must have been done in an update or something, and they haven't been able to roll that out to Switch. But I thought that was, I was like saying, "Oh, like look at this detail," and she's like, "What detail? There's nothing there."
Because the impression I got from mobile is that they would break the puzzles up into more granular versions, so that there was more, so that you could confirm smaller chunks of it at a time. And I got the sense that they would have done that as a just a different audience expectation thing.
Specifically, it's not just on mobile, it's Netflix. So
right.
I would very much assume that any change being made for the mobile version is being catered to a hyper-casual audience.
I didn't like it as much as the original game, personally. I thought that the story they were telling was slightly too convoluted to feel clean. And like, if this was a series of television, you would not find it had a satisfying arc, I think.
It's very non-linear, which was really like, because I had to like a lot of the time go, wait, what year are we in now? And then look back.
It jumped back and forwards a lot, right?
Yeah, I think I guess they were, again, they're kind of experimenting with the format, and maybe they sort of experimented a bit too much with like the narrative structure, because they not only made the game longer, but they also made it like non-linear in terms of time. And there's also a lot more characters, I think.
Yeah.
Some characters, like, you think, oh, this person's going to be important to the story, and then they're only in one case. And it's cool that they're like testing that out. But I think I agree that the structure of the story of the first one was better. But I think, like you said at the start, it is just more Case of the Golden Idol, and Case of the Golden Idol was amazing, and this was amazing too. So,
and there's 2-3 pieces of DLC coming soon.
Something like that, yeah. It might even be 4. Is it 4?
I don't think it's 4. I think you're just trying to will more gaming into existence, Joe.
So, Joe, Leaf's Odyssey.
Yes, I was hoping we'd be able to bring this up. So is this only on our list? I think it is, yeah. So Leaf's Odyssey is I call them stepping games now. It's kind of in the same genre as a classic game called Drod or Deadly Rooms of Death. The premise being it's like 2D top-down. You're a ferret moving through various screens. You're kind of on an adventure, and you go from screen to screen. And each screen is kind of like one big puzzle you've got to solve. And on the screen, there'll be a bunch of enemies that you have to defeat. And then once you've defeated the enemies, a door will open and you'll be able to move to the next room. Or like sometimes there's like branching paths, you can go in different directions. And so what kind of makes a stepping puzzle feel like a stepping puzzle is the fact that the enemies move when you move, like simultaneously. And the way these games kind of work is it's all about understanding how the enemies move when you move. Like one of the first enemies you're introduced to in Leaf's Odyssey is the flying snake, and it can like only move horizontally and vertically. It's trying to move towards the player, and it has like certain rules about when it will change direction, all that kind of stuff. And so part of the game is just figuring out like what are the rules behind this enemy, and how can I use those rules in order to get it into a certain position so that I can defeat it and get through to the next room. One of the things like I particularly loved about this game is that it took the kind of concept that I think most people associate with Drod and made it way more like, I kind of feel like it's like a modernized puzzle game version of Drod. There's fewer enemy types. I think that I don't know too much about Drod, but I think the enemy rules in this are kind of simpler but still interesting, and the puzzles are a lot more kind of focused on like there's like a particular trick to figure out in this puzzle, or a lot of them are kind of like there's an arrangement. The puzzle is just like an interesting arrangement of puzzle components, and you're trying to like first parse it and then figure out like how to defeat all the enemies in that puzzle. And yeah, just a really fun game. It's a pretty hard game, but if that kind of game appeals to you, I think you'd enjoy it. Worth mentioning, so the developer of this game is Alex Diener, who also has a YouTube channel and basically was like the inspiration for me starting my YouTube channel. So I also have that kind of association with it. And another thing to mention is that it has a level editor in game. So that's I kind of think that's like part of the Drod experience is like there's a level editor and the huge community like makes loads of puzzles, and Alex has gone with that approach with this, and there's a level editor, and he's been playing the levels that people have made like on his channel, which is just really cool to see, and it's cool to see that people have been making them. Alan, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, so this it's a challenging game.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of very hard puzzles in this, and throughout the course of playing it, I felt like I was constantly on the edge of like, have I hit my limit? Is this too much? Am I just going to stop here? I've had a really good time. I should just put it down. And each time I hit that point, I'd put it down, and then I'd come back a bit later, and I would just about manage to solve that puzzle I was stuck on, and I'd start being able to make more progress, and then I'd be able to unlock like a few puzzles at a time, and then you've got choices for where to solve next. I'm really glad that I stuck with it and that I kept pushing through, because there's some really, really solid puzzles in here.
Mm-hmm. I really love the northern like snowy area. It's like awesome.
I think probably this game has the best puzzles I've played this in 2024 were in this game. Second place to start stuff, but really impressive design. Like it's got such a small set of pieces that it's making puzzles from. Like there's only like 3 or 4 enemy types, and it just keeps using them in newer, surprising ways.
It's got a cool, like when you're interacting with the enemies, it'll add notes about how the enemies behave to a kind of like little book that you've got, a journal that you've got in the game. So if you're ever like, oh, I can't remember how this enemy behaves in this particular situation, you can just look that up, and that's really handy. I was going to also say that I think one of the things I kind of get scared away from Drod puzzles is that I think a lot of the enemies in Drod have quite complicated rules with like lots of edge cases, and I think the puzzles in this have been designed to avoid the edge cases of some of the like the rules that these enemies have do still have lots of edge cases in them, but the puzzles aren't about those. It's not about like, oh, I just didn't think of this particular move because it's a weird edge case that I wasn't thinking about. No, the puzzle's about something bigger than that, and you don't really have to worry about those edge cases as much. All right, so
Quick hits.
Sure. Was that one of them? Maybe that was one of them.
No, that was the last full one.
Yeah, that was the last full one.
Right.
By God, that should not be the length of a quick hit.
I mean, I just want to quickly say Lock Digital has been amazing.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game and just so satisfying to solve those puzzles. I obviously already played the puzzle book, and the digital version was great to revisit the concepts because it was kind of like solving them again. But also the extra stuff in the game is also really fun. Had a great time.
Oh, yeah.
My quick one, Bond. Very niche, very under the radar, but it's one of the 8 games that I actually played through to completion this year.
Oh,
and like that's pretty impressive in of itself. It's a 3D grid-based puzzle game. There's a lot of these. When I first played it, I thought like, oh, like these mechanics are going to be a bit fiddly, a bit awkward. And so like, even though there's really strong design here, like, is there actually some sticking power here? And I was surprised to find out there was. It's pretty short. There's not a ton of puzzles. I think I beat the whole thing in maybe 3 hours. People who play fewer grid-based 3D puzzle games will spend longer than that, but like there's not an overwhelming amount of content, and it does keep it fresh pretty consistently.
Great. My quick hit is also an under-the-radar game that most people haven't heard of, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, by Machine Games. This is not a thinky game. However, it has come up mostly when Alan asked me if I wanted to include it in Thinky Third Thursday, and people have asked me, what do you think about this game? Because everyone keeps praising the puzzles. Here is my TLDR. There are a lot of mainstream games, AAA games, big budget, single-player games that will throw puzzles in either as padding or usually just as gameplay variety.
Towers of Hanoi.
Yeah, Towers of Hanoi, all that shit. And those are frequently people's mainstream players' least favorite parts. Frequently, there will be like a companion character that tells you the solution the moment that you see that there is a puzzle. This has extremely good puzzles by that standard.
Mm-hmm.
If you come to this game because you want the entirety of the game, not just because it's a thinky game, I think you will be pleased with the puzzles. Mm-hmm. If you want to buy this game because you think it is a thinky puzzle game just in its own, you are going to be disappointed. However, if you love the idea of Hitman meets Dishonored, and specifically if you love the idea of putting on a silly outfit, crouching down, sneaking up between 2 fascists who are captioned as Fascist 1 and Fascist 2, and taking a violin, smashing it over one of their heads, making it super loud for you, but somehow the other character doesn't hear it, so that you can just deck them from behind also. Yeah, this game rules. I don't know what to say. This game rules. It's not a thinky game. It has a shocking amount of thinky elements for a non-thinky game, which is why I'm giving it a quick shout out here.
Incredible. All right, my quick shout out then will be Ouros. Came out start of the year. It's from Michael Cam. It's basically just a really nice, relaxing puzzle game. You start with a loop. You kind of pick edges of the loop and sort of drag the loop so it goes through a number of sequential numbers. And in doing so, you make really pretty little tunes. It's very relaxing. It kind of like scratches the same itch that games like Mini Metro and stuff scratch for me. Like, I don't think I've completed all of the levels, but it's the kind of game I keep returning to throughout the year. Really loved it.
Yeah, it's a lovely game. Can I do one more quick one?
Go for it.
Yes, you haven't done a quick one yet.
No, I have. I did. I guess I did Lock Digital.
Oh, you did Lock Digital, yes.
I'm going to do a cheeky extra one, which is, I think, the only free game that we've put on our list, which is Croquet Conundrum. So people can check that out now. It's very simple. It's like, it's, you know, just enough polish to, you know, feel good to play. It's got like the best clack sound when you like hit the ball. But basically, it's like a croquet themed puzzle game where you're like hitting the ball through I guess they call them hoops, even though they're not hoop shaped. And it's just really good puzzles and has some cool like secret meta twists in it as well that are just really fun to discover. And it's just a good time. Like, of all the free games I played this year, that was the one that's like stuck in my head the most.
And if you don't know what croquet is, that you are American or not born into privilege, or both.
Is it called something else in America, or just people
No,
don't
it just
know about
it's
it?
a very posh game.
Okay.
It's
An unbelievably posh British exclusive game.
Surely
Yes.
people have seen the like Disney Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yeah, so I was going to say, it's an Alice in Wonderland thing.
Oh, you mean the movie from 100 years ago? What? Hey, Joe, why are you just assuming that everyone knows? No, this is like exclusively at like old money country clubs in the US.
To be fair, I have no idea what the rules of croquet are, so it might be nothing like the actual game.
Okay,
I just pretty close, as I understand it.
Okay.
Just want to point that out for our American, not from old money listeners. Awesome. Thank you so much. Joe, do you have anything that you want to plug?
I mean, yeah, just check out the Think Games website, please. If you could like follow us on socials, all that kind of stuff, and join our newsletter, would love that. We're doing the Thinky Awards very soon, and so there'll be public voting for that. That may or may not be open at the time this goes out. If not, it'll be very soon after. Just play lots of great Thinky games.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to the Trackneck and Friends official podcast. Our music is by Priscilla Snow, who you can find at ghoulnoise.bandcamp.com. Our podcast artwork is by Adam DeGrandis. Our podcast is edited by Melanie Zawodniak. Please rate and review us on your podcast service of choice, and be sure to tune in next episode for more interesting conversations.